All right, what's up, Elevate crew? So I wanted to shoot this video, just trying this out. Sean sent me a question basically saying, like, what are the benefits of wearing headgear when you're doing striking and what are the drawbacks? And I thought I would kind of expand it out a little bit because a lot of people talk all the time about why you wear gi and why you wear no gi and what are the pluses and minuses, right? And the friction kind of creates more, the friction of the gi makes it easier to hold positions, to be static. It gives you extra things you can feed. It makes the game a little more complicated. So it adds some layers of complexity. But on the other side, no gi, it makes you have to be a little more precise in your attacks. Your grips change, right? So there's a lot of stuff, and everyone's talked about it ad nauseum forever. And then people talk about, 4-ounce gloves versus 16-ounce gloves. What's the difference? Obviously 16-ounce gloves you can cover up. And when you look at maybe 4-ounce gloves, covering up's a little bit less functional. You also just have to learn how to strike through a different surface. So they're both tools. They both have purposes in terms of rounding yourself out as a combat sports athlete. But those have been discussed a lot. So let's discuss some things that don't get discussed as much. Wearing headgear, right? So wearing a big headgear on your head when you're sparring for the purposes of training. What are the benefits of it? First of all, headgear limits your vision in some way, shape, or form. So your peripheral vision is limited, so you can't use that tool as much, so you have to develop other tools. So you can defend a punch by either having good structure, so like a block in the correct place is correct structure. You can defend by like intuitive feel and like moving based on your partner's reaction. If you watch that clip that everyone watches now of Canelo or Julio Cesar Chavez back in the day, is my favorite guy to watch, of like intuitive head movement. His head was always not where the opponent was swinging. Frazier's a great example. Tyson's a great example, right? So you develop that, or you can see the strike and react. So if you're using headgear, you're limiting your ability to see. So that piece of the defense goes away a little bit. So you're going to develop the other two more. So one of those things, it's just a tool. You can take away some of your vision and make everything else a little bit better. The other thing that's good about headgear is that you are, just by human nature, you put on big gloves, you put your opponent in headgear, you're going to throw a harder punch. So offensively, you're training on sticking a little bit more. The studies have shown that the force of a 16-ounce glove hitting headgear is the exact same force on the brain as a 4-ounce glove hitting a head with no headgear. Every study that I've researched. So there's no actual safety, but the perceived safety is going to cause you to throw harder. So it's good for you offensively to get used to like teeing off a little bit, as long as you have appropriate sparring partners in that instance. On the flip side is like this is an exact one-to-one. When you take off headgear, you can see, so you can play more of that reactionary defense. You can use more of a vision and reflexes game. And then two, you are going to not take as much punishment if you're training in sparring. So guys are not going to tee off on you typically as much when you don't have the headgear on. So that's a pretty easy one. So you're going to get some benefits out of using headgear, and it's something you should keep in the playbook. And as an amateur in boxing or kickboxing, you're required to wear headgear for now. So you're going to have to get used to doing it as well. It's just another rule set to compete in. And even if you don't want to compete that rule set, it's another limiting factor to grow you over time. So next one, wrestling shoes. So obviously MMA, we don't fight with wrestling shoes on. No gi grappling, no wrestling shoes allowed, because there aren't any cool adult wrestling tournaments around. We don't really get to wear our wrestling shoes a lot in competition. But why do I think they're a great training tool? They train you to really plant your foot in the ground. Whether we're talking about boxing shoes or wrestling shoes, they create more grip on the ground so you can drive through your legs more consistently. And because of that, you build up all the muscles that are firing out of that drive position better. So when it's just fact of life of like, if imagine you were only able to practice punching a brick wall, how hard would you be able to hit that brick wall? Not that hard. So you get a punching bag because it's soft and you can slam through it and it feels really good, gives good feedback, that feels awesome. So it's just a tool, right? So same thing. If you wear wrestling shoes, you get used to those drive patterns. You're not damaging your toes as much. Your body's not going to naturally compensate and keep you safe. So if you practice that way consistently, that will carry over. Also, it's a little bit more difficult to free your foot on shots. So if you're playing defense and somebody grabs your ankle, it's a little bit harder to clear your ankle. So you have to learn some other defensive patterns than just limp laying your foot out. And then let's look at vice versa. Wrestling shoes, if you're going to compete barefoot, you got to understand how you need to find purchase on the ground. So you have to have enough familiarity with that to know how on different surfaces your foot feels and where you need to dig in and where the correct pressure to apply on your foot is. Hand wraps. So one thing that's big, you watch professional boxers, they get wrapped up really intensely before practices, before any session. They're wrapping their hands like crazy. Part of that's a safety issue in terms of their hands. They got to have a long career punching people in the head, so you got to protect your hands. But also, once again, more padding equals greater perceived safety, so you can throw harder. So when you're in practice and you have your hands wrapped really well, you can tee off and kill every single shot. So then you're working more of the developing muscles in your shoulders, in your abs, in your legs. Every single muscle that's involved in the kinetic change of the punch is working harder and developing further because you have that perceived safety. So super clutch to wrap your hands really well, to learn how to do that well, to invest in nice wraps. All that stuff's important. Last one, shin guards. So we were talking about this after Rolly and Cheyenne had their MMA debuts, and they both basically finished the fight with kicks. And it was like, oh man, doing amateur kickboxing, you have to kick with these giant shin guards on. And so same thing, you have to kick dudes so hard in order to hurt them when you have shin guards on. So when all of a sudden you take the shin guards off, your power just feels tremendous comparatively. Also in practice, it's a lot easier to get your kicks caught. So any catching, sweeping, tie dumps, etc., is a lot easier with shin guards on. So it makes you a lot better defensively about not getting your kicks caught once you're not wearing that shin guard. It's much easier. Same thing, it's harder to find gaps. So you get better and better at targeting because you're moving a bigger space to find the gap. So when your leg slims down, you can find defensive holes a little bit easier. I keep going underneath my elbow, which is not on the camera, but that's where we would be targeting. And also it's just a good way to kind of stepwise build up the toughness of your shins. Like if we had to go bone on bone all the time, it wouldn't be good. So even if we're thinking about an unarmed combat situation where we're not wearing any gloves, any wraps, anything else, or we're thinking about MMA where we've got our hands wraps and 4-ounce gloves, but no other protective gear, there's still benefits to using these pieces of gear. And the biggest one is that the perceived safety allows you to exert more force across pretty much every domain. And therefore you develop the musculature and the mindset and the kinetic chain and kind of that myelin pattern in your body of like, this is how we're creating force, and your body learns that and replicates that even typically once you take away a lot of the padding. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Just a fun little quick answer to a question that Cheyenne had. But yeah, keep it Rizzle. Talk to you soon. Peace out.